Welcome to this bite-sized video for the Digital Support Services T-Level, where we'll explore Task 2 for the Network Cabling and Digital Infrastructure Employer Set project. The Employer Set project consists of a series of tasks designed to assess the 5 assessment objectives shown. And this skills assessment is set and marked by MCFE, where students will need to apply the core knowledge and demonstrate the core skills from the specification. The Employer Set project, or ESP, is conducted during a 2-week assessment window, which will be available during the summer and autumn terms. Tasks are designed to replicate the real-life industry experience, and we used employer and industry experts when developing the ESP to help achieve this. This video will focus on Task 2, where students will be involved in an information gathering interview. And this task will assess assessment objectives 1, 2, and 4, with AO4 focusing on communication and students demonstrating their use of English skills. Task 1 would be completed by students before moving on to Task 2, which is scheduled by you, the provider, during the rest of that first assessment week, with a session lasting 2 hours and 10 minutes long, which is conducted under supervised control. And if students have any access arrangements or reasonable adjustments, such as additional time for assessments, then you should apply that internally and increase the task time by the relevant amount. And while you are given a window to schedule this task, it's important to note that all students must complete the assessment on the same day, with the assessment materials only being available and accessible to students during the supervised session. So do take account of this and ensure you have secure storage areas for students' evidence. Internet access is permitted should students wish to research anything to help with constructing their interview questions. You must ensure that privacy mode has been disabled, with policies applied to prevent students from deleting their browsing history, as a copy of the browsing history will also be required. And the interview needs to be audio recorded, so do ensure you have suitable resources and equipment in order to facilitate this. In Task 2, students will be presented with an issue that they will need to design a solution for, with 12 marks in total available, and students are also assessed on their English skills within this task. But the use of English skills is marked holistically with its own marking scheme. So the examiners will award a maximum of 4 marks for English skills, but it's based on the student's performance across Tasks 2, 3, and 4. As for the brief itself, students are given limited information about the network issue or plans the business has in mind. And so this task is about finding out the necessary information via a simulated interview, with this task having 3 parts to it. The first hour is for students to research and prepare questions for the interview in order to better understand the business's resources, issues being faced, and their requirements for the new network. Students will then have a 10-minute simulated interview, which will be audio recorded, with the tutor often taking the role of the interviewee. For example, the tutor might be playing the role of the network manager for the client. And then following the interview, students will need to summarize their findings for 2 different audiences, a technical audience and a non-technical audience. As all students need to sit this assessment on the same day, you may find it useful to use a staggered timetabling approach to this task. And this table is going to show you an example of how this could work, with the first student arriving at 9 AM to prepare their interview questions for 1 hour, and then the second student arriving 20 minutes later, and the third student 20 minutes after that, and so on. 20-minute gaps between the scheduling. Then at 10 AM, the first student can begin their 10-minute interview, which will be conducted in a different room. And when they've finished the interview, they can then return to the first room to write up their emails. And this is when the scheduling of 20-minute gaps is useful, as it will give the tutor 10 minutes crossover time for saving the audio recording and preparing for the next student. And you can have multiple staff involved in the simulated role-play interview, therefore getting through more students in less time. and NCFE will also supply a supporting document for tutors who are involved with the interview, which will contain relevant information to address the students' questions during the interview. 10-minute interview element is worth 6 marks out of the 12 available, and then up to 4 marks for the use of English skills across tasks 2 to 4. And shown on screen is the highest band marking descriptors, with students being marked on their ability to communicate and asking logical and relevant questions, with those questions designed to provide a useful insight into the client's issues and needs. And as always, students should refer to the context and consider the scenario and information in the brief. Some advice for the preparation and interview portion of the task itself might include beginning with how students actually phrase their questions. And it can be useful to break up any technical or resource questions into smaller parts, where the answer is likely to be quite limited or direct. This should give students a bit more time for taking notes, since the questions will be more staggered. And it can be useful for demonstrating active listening, as students can summarize or double check the technical information they've recorded. Then using more open questions when discussing the network problems and the requirements. This can provide opportunities to explore the issues and again demonstrate active listening. For example, a question like how many staff will need to access the network remotely would only get a limited response, such as a number in this case. But by making it more open and asking the requirements for accessing the network remotely isn't limiting the response that could be given, and the response could encompass other aspects, creating further discussion and exploration, such as managing and controlling the remote network, remote access to files, other remote solutions like cloud storage. And this might be followed up with some more closed questions if necessary, helping to show active listening and adaptation too, as students may end up discussing aspects they hadn't originally planned for. To aid with this note-taking, utilizing tables or fields on their question sheet can reduce how long it takes students to record the necessary information. This also means students can be more focused on the interviewee, and it's easier to see an overview of the information, which students can then utilize to again demonstrate active listening by summarizing and double checking. As it is students actually conducting the interview, then it's best if they take the lead to help simulate a real-life scenario, starting immediately with students introducing themselves and the purpose of the interview. Now, if you have students who maybe are a bit more shy, not feeling as confident yet, then you can begin the interview. But it's best to put the onus back on them. And one other aspect to prepare students for is the possibility that they'll ask questions that you don't have the answer to. Now, you might be able to produce a logical response from the information provided, but other times the information provided may not be sufficient. In which case, it's okay to tell students that you don't have that information available, and do prepare students for that possible response so they aren't caught off guard. The other 6 marks for this task comes from the students summarizing their findings in the form of emails, and shown on screen are the highest band marking descriptors, with use of English also being assessed. And the use of English overall is an aspect worth highlighting, as students will be communicating to a technical audience and a non-technical audience, and will need to amend the language used accordingly. This even includes the style of language used, such as a formal or more informal tone, depending on the email recipient, as well as using technical terms or contextualized examples. The email should discuss the different network issues that have been identified, ensuring there's multiple aspects being considered. Let's take a look now at the two different audiences and how the communication will be adapted. And these examples have been produced using the Summer 2022 assessment series. The implied relationship between the students and the email recipient will decide the formality of the email. So if the technical audience was the line manager, for example, then there's an informal style to the email, and it can use much more direct language. And if the non-technical audience is the client, organization CEO, for example, then a more formal style should be adopted with straightforward language used. When describing the network issues and requirements, the students should make use of relevant technical terms and acronyms when emailing the technical audience. Whereas the non-technical audience, that sort of technical jargon would need to be avoided, with different aspects given a suitable context or a contextualized example to aid their understanding. And for ongoing preparations, a student might find it useful to keep a glossary of terms or concepts, which includes a description for the different audience types. We hope you found this useful and have a better understanding of Task 2. And do see our other bite-sized videos that form part of this Employer Set Project series. Thank you.